Our next speaker is none other than Byron Katie, author of Loving What Is and creator of the revolutionary process called The Work. I know you're just going to love what Katie has to say. The work really helps you to understand that so much of our emotional suffering comes from the stories we tell ourselves. So I'd like to get started and let Katie tell you herself about her work, The Work, and ways you can improve your mental health and happiness. Welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation. It's truly a privilege.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering, our summit is called Mental Health and Happiness Summit. I was wondering, so many people, when they hear mental health and happiness, they kind of know what it is when they have it and when they don't, but I don't know if they really know how to define what it is. How would you define mental health and happiness?
Well, it's like we all know the difference between what hurts and what doesn't. So that's it.
Okay, great.
When we're suffering, when we're not.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely feel that, don't we?
Yes. And if I am thinking thoughts that are, let's say, negative about you, about the world, about myself, then I'm going to experience emotionally suffering.
That's right. So our thoughts actually can trigger that.
Well, actually, the thoughts are cause and the emotions are the effect of cause, which is what we're thinking and believing. So we think that our emotions come first and that there's no cause for them really when we're completely asleep to cause and effect, that internal cause and effect. But when I'm like here with you, it's like I'm so happy to be here. I'm so just like in awe of having the privilege of maybe contributing something that would help someone. And you are such a light. And so, all those thoughts, they're authentic for me. And so I'm feeling this great, sense of not just peace. I love to say there's nothing more exciting than peace, but it's not just peace. It's this energy, this excitement that allows me to contribute in the world at the level that we all deserve. And not just as an individual, but isn't it, isn't it a powerful thing to just, and you say so on your website, just to be with people that are happy, that really care about you. Well, I am the person that really cares about me when I care about you. But if I'm believing my negative thoughts about you, then how caring is that for me and my life? It's only myself I attack when I would see you as anything less than beautiful and perfect. And it runs like that. So if I am in the state, to keep it simply, the state of seeing things in a positive way, happy life. If I am in the state of seeing the world or myself in this negative way, then unhappy life. And it's in the moment. It's not forever. It's just in that moment I am seeing the world in one of those two ways. Then it's all the difference. But Kim, knowing a little about me, it wasn't always that way. I had no idea that it was the thoughts. It was what I was thinking and believing was the cause of my depression. I thought you really were, my children, my husband, life. I thought that was the cause of my suffering. In fact, I really believed it until in that moment, in that state of grace, I was allowed to see something else. And basically, I saw that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered. And when I don't believe my thoughts, I don't suffer. And I've come to see that this is true for every human being.
That is such an important message for our Mental Health and Happiness Summit, because we want people to understand that they are not victims of unhappiness, that they're actually creating it themselves. And the good news about the fact that they're creating it is that they could create happiness if they chose different thoughts. So
yeah, and those different thoughts, we'll say those positive thoughts, are always there for us to notice. It's just that the negative ones override what I refer to as our true nature, which is just pure goodness. pure goodness, just as, it's like we are that. And the way that I invite people to test this is anything that opposes what is beautiful and good feels like stress. So that would be against our nature. And it's the simplest test we can all just notice for ourselves.
I like that very much. So what would you say are the biggest personal or even cultural obstacles to mental health and happiness?
Well, I think that in whatever language, whatever culture, whatever part of the world we're born in, no matter whether we're rich or poor, whether we're sick or well, when we believe our thoughts, we suffer. And when we don't believe our negative thoughts, we don't suffer. And so this, thinking goes across the barrier of who and what we believe ourselves to be. When we believe ourselves to be anything less than beautiful, we're going to experience stress. That's repeating what I pointed to earlier. But for me, I didn't know how not to believe those thoughts. They would just keep coming up and coming up. I would say, I'm lovable, loving, and loved. I'm lovable, loving, and loved. Oh my gosh, I'm lovable, loving, and loved. Oh my gosh, now I'm feeling. Oh my gosh, now I'm treating people that way. And then something would happen and boom, I was slammed complete. I am no longer loving, lovable, and loved, and neither are you. So it would override what is truer to my nature. I am lovable, loving, and loved. So one is the song of myself, my true nature, and the other opposes it. So it's music that's completely off to our hearts, to our minds. So I saw that if I captured what I was thinking and believing, if I just identified it and wrote it down, then there it was in black and white. So now the thought is physical. Okay. And then I sat with it. And for example, let's say I've asked him to take out the trash for, I've asked him 5 times, and every time he says, do it yourself. I'm too busy. I always have to do it. It's not whatever it is. And I think the thought, he should take out the trash. So in the face of that, he should take out the trash. Is it true? So there are 4 questions and then opposites that I invite people to so that they can see the difference between sanity and insanity. In other words, as you would say, the difference between reality and what we're believing about reality. So he should take out the trash. First question, is it true? Second question, can I absolutely know that it's true? And then to understand that these questions can only be answered out of that stillness, out of that meditation and contemplation as we question what we're believing. So then notice how you react when you believe the thought, he should take out the trash. And then you close your eyes and you're in that situation and that argument and that moment that you're so upset. In other words, you're remembering that moment and you're in that situation. Maybe you can even smell it, taste it, but you're in there. And with your eyes closed, visualizing and noticing how do I react in that situation when I believe the thought? In the stomach. And those emotions, they begin to take over my body. Yeah. And then I see myself attacking him. I see myself in my mind's eye. I'm a complete victim. It's like I'm witnessing myself. I'm witnessing him in that situation. And I notice the trash is just sitting there. And I notice 2 people at war. And then I begin to experience a kind of sense of compassion. And I continue to notice how I react. And then I begin to attack myself for attacking him. And then I begin to notice the guilt that brings on. This is a very, there's not one of those 4 questions that isn't just, it's so revealing. And, yes. And then that 4th question, as I'm witnessing that situation, who would it be without the thought, he should take out the trash? And then again, I witness compassionately those two people. It's just, we're causing war in our home. And who is the cause? I can see my part, and I can see who I'd be without the thought. And I see this man, he's bothered. He doesn't have time. He can't, and I see his argument to him is just as valid as my argument is to me. But there's so much revealed there. And then I turn it around. The work is 4 questions and turn around. So he should take out the trash. Turned around, I should take out the trash. And I see as long as that argument took, I could have the trash out 5 times because I'm still carrying a grudge.
That's right.
And either way, the trash just sits there and I'm blind to it because I'm focused on him. So turned around, I should take out the trash. So that can become my living turnaround. Because as I look at it, it's more preferable to war. It's more preferable than having the trash sit there as opposed to not being emptied. But it's just so valuable. And then another turnaround, he should not take out the trash. And then I begin to see why not. That I'm the one that wants it out. He doesn't. He has no problem with it. He's much more at peace with reality than I am. So it's like that. And I don't have to take out the trash. I just have to, do I really want it out or not? And when I believe that thought, does it bring peace or stress into my life? I interrupted you, Kim. I'm sorry.
No. I was just thinking, if you're going to go to war over trash, the casualty of that war is not only your mental health and happiness, but the relationship that you have with this person that you love. So yeah,
I'm costing me that happiness as well. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond and the ripples just go out. And in my home, when I want to see the cause of my unhappiness, I look to myself because I can see that he doesn't have control over that every time I sit in those 4 questions and turnarounds that I do. And that I'm responsible for my happiness. He's not.
Before I even knew about the work, I had a similar situation with my son who his highest need is freedom. And when he would come home from school, he would relieve himself of pretty much everything: shoes, homework, clothes, put on his outside clothes and go play. And I would come home to a trashed house all the time. And I was telling myself the thought, not only he should clean up his own stuff and be responsible, but I'm making up a whole story about how he should respect me, and he's disrespecting me by doing this.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. I'd be driving home. I had a 45-minute commute. My shoulders are getting up around my ears. I'm mad before I even walk into the house.
Yes.
And the day I realized, this isn't his problem. It's my problem.
Oh, wow.
I'm the one that doesn't want the house to be a mess.
Yeah.
So I figured out I would walk in the house, I would get a laundry basket, I would fill it with his stuff, and I would walk into his room and I would dump it out in the pile. And his stuff would be in his room where it belonged. He wasn't mad at me because I wasn't trying to punish him or hurt him in any way.
Yeah.
I just was taking responsibility for what I wanted.
Yeah.
It was a common living area that was reasonably neat. I'm not Martha Stewart, but reasonably neat would be nice.
Yeah, but giving yourself what you needed to be comfortable, and that's what's important.
And it changed everything, and I had to let go of the thought that he's disrespecting me.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't anything to me. He was doing what he needed to do for him.
Yeah, it's like he was not disrespecting you. He was in his own experience. As you spoke to that, I had the most interesting experience yesterday. Someone asked me to look at a Vine thing, and then I started looking at a whole series, and on this Vine thing, Kim, it showed teenagers, males, coming home from school, and they would do exactly what you were talking about. That is so weird. They showed 3 or 4 videos like that. And not only that, they would go, some of them, directly to their bedroom and just take everything off and just, except maybe their underwear or something, and cover themselves up and just lie there. And anyway, had to say it.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that odd? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Strange connections.
Yeah.
So, what about you personally? You mentioned that you had an experience or somewhat of an epiphany, a gift of realizing that you needed to question the thoughts you're telling
Mm-hmm.
yourselves. What about you personally? How did you get to the work? What happened in your life that led you there?
Well, I was so depressed and agoraphobic, and this depression was over a period of at least a decade, and it was so painful. It was difficult to breathe. It's like I would wake up from a sleep and just see that I was still alive and be offended. It was
Mm,
horrible. It was horrible. So that's why I am so so happy to move the work in the world. I don't want anyone to ever have to suffer like that. And, and, um, and then there was a moment I was so full of, my life was just so filled with self-loathing that at some point I didn't believe I even deserved a bed to sleep in. So I would actually sleep on the floor beside my bed. And, and, and there was a moment I opened my eyes and actually I felt a bug crawl over my foot, and I opened my eyes, and in place of all that darkness is a life that no one ever described. No one told me. I thought it was the way heaven is described. It was a world that had no name, and that was amazing. And then the thoughts hit my head, and this beautiful, amazing, bright, amazing thing just separated. And then there were names, and in that name, the separation, like window, sky, flower, tree, wall, ceiling, carpeting, bed. I mean, it was just, and it was the most amazing thing. And I saw that it was mind that produced that. And prior to that production was that peace that really does pass any understanding that I could begin to pass on. And I don't have to. I found that people have all had their own amazing experience. So for me, to be able to hold that experience, this inquiry was alive in me. It just was, for example, if I had the thought he should take out the trash, it just slowed down in time, which always takes me back to that moment of don't know. I don't know, but the questions or answers, I know he's not supposed to take out the trash because he's not. And then we get back to this reality you point to. And there's so much joy in that. He should take out the trash. I should take out the trash. And then it goes further than that. I see how troubled he is, how rushed he is, whatever it is. And how can I support him? Because that makes me happy.
that's right.
And now that I have peace of mind, life is no longer hard, and I have the energy to live in the state of how can I help? And secretly, no one has to know about it. We hear these random acts of kindness. It just becomes a way of life. It's like we're service. And that's what peace looks like. That's what happiness looks like. And it's what it feeds on. But if I want something in return, then I'm feeding on something else.
Yes.
Yeah. Happiness, the expression happiness is its own reward. Truly. Yes. If I do something for you that is my reward, there is no later. That's it. I'm living out of my true nature.
That's right. Because when you give with strings attached, it's not a gift at all.
Yeah. It's a debt you owe me. And it's a secret. You can never know. So when I don't get it, I'm always just so hurt. It's that kind of thinking that is so.
Yeah.
In my life, experiencing something like that is an automatic judge your neighbor worksheet. And just so all of your, everyone here knows that it's always free at thework.com. You just push print, no newsletter to sign up for. It's just a straight up deal. And also there's a little $1.99 app that, carries that judge your neighbor worksheet on it with instructions.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know you had the app.
Yeah. You know, we're waiting for our children in line at the grocery store, and maybe one cuts a line, and we feel that indignation, you know, that righteous indignation, and those emotions like that are like, you know, that emotion you feel that it's just like, you know, it's just, you feel it and it's okay. Yeah. So those emotions are like that alarm clock that says, whoops, my head's off.
Yes.
And so that's when I just pull out the app, and before I know it, I'm standing with the checker.
So the judge your neighbor sheet, does that have the 4 questions on it?
Yes. At the bottom, the judge your neighbor work. And also complete instructions how to do the work are free at thework.com as well. Yeah, and videos and YouTubes and
I would just say, because I've been to your website, that I think it's one of the most generous websites on the whole internet. I mean, you just open your heart and your work to anyone who's interested in learning more without asking for anything in return. It's a beautiful thing, Katie. Thank you so much for that.
That's so wonderful to hear. You know, here here in this company, we're always about, are we giving enough? What can we give? Are we giving enough? What else can we give? And if we see something beautiful, it goes up right away. And
that is great.
And of course, the School for the Work and the events, there's a price on them, and they move the work. That's how we're able to do it. And so many scholarships that we give to people all over the world that are working with people until they understand the difference between reality and what is not reality. And that's what I love about reality. It won't move for us. It is it is, but only because it is what it is. And I'm so grateful for that.
Well, and that's actually part of what you talk about when people they get frustrated or upset about the way things really are. For just an example, when my husband was 37 years old, he passed away from leukemia. And it would be really easy for me to say, it shouldn't be that way. That's unfair. That's not right. He's a father. He never did anything wrong. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. You know, this shouldn't be happening. Yeah. But the reality is it's happening. So therefore it should be happening. Yeah. And that's the thing that is such a challenge for people. I think we have these values in our minds that people should do certain things, and the reality should be a certain way.
And that God should do certain things, and reality should be a certain way. And, you know, that I know mind, you know, I am so much wiser than the way things are.
Yeah, that ego.
And that opposition is the cause of my unhappiness.
Well, one of the things that you talk about, I wonder if you could expand upon a little bit, are those questions. Whose business am I in?
Yeah, so I talk about the 3 kinds of business, that I can only find 3 kinds of business in all of the universe: my business, your business, and God's business. So, for example, whose business is it what you think?
Mine.
Whose business is it what I think?
Yours.
And whose business is the way of it? You know, whatever is running the show, reality.
That would be God.
Yeah. And that would be the whatever word people put on it. And we have a lot of words for God in the world. But, for me, you know, it's reality because it rules. It's always kind. It's always generous. And we're not always able to see that, but it's always the case. If we just, you know, in my world, question what I'm believing, that's all I'm left with. So, when I am feeling lonely, or I invite all of you, you know, to play with the three kinds of business. Anytime you're feeling lonely or separate, ask yourself mentally, whose business are you in? And it can bring you right back, and you feel that, you're connected again. You're home. You're home. And it's like everything we need to do is within our grasp, because we can only do what's right here, right now to do. And so we become useful again rather than unhappy.
I love that. And it so points out how much control we really have over our emotional lives. I mean, when we feel that out of control piece, we can say, wait a minute, where am I?
Yeah.
How can I adjust my thoughts so that I'll have a different emotional experience? It's not the emotional experience that creates the result of the life that we're experiencing.
Yeah.
It really is so much of what we think.
Yeah.
And we have to change it.
Yeah. And for me, it's completely what I think. What I'm thinking, and believing, that creates my entire world. So until what I'm believing about the world changes, the world can't change, because the world is a projection of my own mind. No two people live in the same world. We all have our own world, and these negative thoughts, these thoughts that would oppose reality, they're all recycled. There just are no new stressful thoughts, and we've been thinking them since the beginning of time. But people are waking up to them, waking up to this war with reality and the unhappiness that it causes.
Yeah, as if our unhappiness was going to change the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
It's not going to change anything except to cause us more stress.
Yeah. My husband shouldn't die of leukemia. My husband shouldn't die, and he has leukemia. And so turned around, my husband should die. And okay, if the universe is friendly, which in my world it certainly is, if the universe is friendly, why is this so that he should die? And we begin to get really still and sit in that. And the examples show us this friendly universe. He doesn't have to suffer. Without giving answers, I leave this for everyone to sit in, but you certainly have found yours.
Yes, I have. Yep. One of the things, just to share, one of the things was that when my husband was healthy, he was a workaholic. And when he became sick, he spent more time with our children than he would have had he lived to be 100, doing wonderful things. So it was a gift. And,
they'll always have that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think it's so hard. People sometimes feel as if they're somehow disloyal, or if they don't suffer a certain amount of time, then that must mean that they didn't care enough. When really they don't have to suffer at all if they're ready.
Yeah, if they're of right mind, there's no suffering in it. There's only how can I help, how can I serve, and I love you. And this great sense of gratitude for every moment you have with this person you love. It's just, it's a most amazing experience to love without war.
Yes.
To love without war in your heart about the way things are. But oh my goodness, there's got to be a trade-off for me. I had to see the beauty in what is before I could accept what is. I really had to understand reality, and that's how I discovered my own true nature. I discovered the true nature of reality, and we're a match. I understand, and what a gift! What a gift! Socrates said, an unquestioned world is not, an unquestioned life is not worth living. And I love that. And I think it was Einstein that said that the only important question is the universe friendly or not?
And you've answered that question.
Yeah. And I have the privilege of being a skeptic. So I'm testing it all the time.
And I bet you haven't found the exception yet, have you?
Not yet. Not yet. But believe me, this ego tries hard.
Oh, I believe you. I've got one too. And what would you say to our listeners would be some things that they could do if they're stuck in that belief that the universe isn't friendly or that reality isn't kind? How would you help them?
I would invite them to identify what they're thinking and believing about the universe in that moment, or about that other person or themselves or whatever it is that they're at war with, to identify that and write it down on a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, and then question using the instructions at the bottom. Question what they're thinking and believing, and turn it around and find examples until you understand, until there's peace, and in that freedom from suffering. And that automatically leaves a happy life. I didn't expect that, Kim, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to love what is. I just wanted the pain to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And you found so much more.
Yeah. I found you.
Aw.
Oh my goodness. The beauty in front of us, to love that, to appreciate that, it's so fulfilling.
It really is. Have you come across people, Katie, who aren't ready to let go of their suffering?
Yes. And it's not that they're not ready to let go of their suffering. They're not ready to question what they're believing to be true. And so it's perfectly understandable, because what we're believing to be true creates our identity. Yes. And so to expect someone to give it up, because that's what the ego, what happens, who you believe yourself to be, begins to fall away, and it leaves this lovely, happy,
joyful,
yes, life. And then the thought comes, I don't know how to be happy. And it's terrifying. And then it can put us right back into another Judge Your Neighbor worksheet.
You better have reams and reams of paper. Get through some of the next few days if you're going to.
But we're either believing our thoughts or we're questioning them. There is no other choice other than an occasional epiphany. And for me, it wasn't enough. It had to be full on, because I just could not bear. Who can bear to look at someone you're supposed to love and feel only anger toward them or resentment? And that's a terrible state of mind. It's and a false one. That's why it's so terrible.
And Katie, I think that is a problem that happens in a lot of relationships, because I wrote a book called Secrets of Happy Couples, and I wanted to interview 100 happy couples before I wrote the book to get some insights from them. In front of the audiences that I speak with, I would ask them, if you're a happy couple, if you know of a happy couple, send them my way. Yeah. And I would get people, but my criteria was you had to be together at least 10 years, and you had to both say that you were happy in the relationship when you weren't with your partner. So, you were free to say what you wanted to say. And I would get some that say, oh, yes, I'm happy. But the partner would say, not really.
Yeah.
And it was sad to me that it took me 2 years to find 100 happy couples. And I think so much of it is because of what you're saying. They believe that their unhappiness is caused by someone else instead of their own thoughts and what they're telling themselves about the situation.
Yeah.
And it damages and destroys relationships.
It does. We divorce over it. And then we believe exactly the same thing going into the next relationship.
That's right.
Because we're still believing those same thoughts. We put them on anyone or anything. It's like we love each other, and then I believe something about you that is negative. Whether I'm right or wrong, I believe something about you that is negative. My happiness is gone. Yes. Now, I'm responsible in my life for identifying that thought, getting still enough to identify, and then put it on paper, and then sit on those 4 questions and turn around and then see my own business. And then to straighten that out, make it right, and then start over.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It sounds very simple. What would you say to someone who says, you make it sound so easy, Katie, it's not that easy?
I would say, I agree with you. I don't call it the work for nothing. But I had it works because the answers that respond, like if someone's doing the work, the answers that are meeting those questions, that's the wisdom inside of that human being. So it is that human being's own wisdom that is setting them free. It's not another teacher. It's not someone saying, think this, do that, do this. It's you, yourself, getting in touch with reality. And reality is always kinder than what we're believing about it, what we believe it to be. Reality is, it's never hurt anyone. It's like, if someone says, I'm going to hit you with this hammer, I'm going to just hit you with this hammer. Am I okay? Other than what I'm thinking and believing, I'm perfectly okay. I'm as okay as I was before they told me that. Mm-hmm. And then it gets this close, and I'm trying to look at that. And am I okay? Yes. In this instant, I'm okay. Other than what I'm thinking and believing, I'm okay. And then they hit me. How do I know it hurts? Until I wait to see. Mm-hmm. Okay. The old way. He says, I'm going to hit you. I imagine like that, not on purpose, but I imagine him hitting me instantly. I even see an image of it, and I become fearful. And he hasn't even moved the hammer yet.
Right. So
I am creating my own fear and terror in that moment. I'm talking about in that moment only. Mm-hmm. And so that's on me. That's on me. And I have to look at, is that terror more painful than if he did hit me? And when I look at this imagination the way it was, all those years of depression, it was much worse than any hammer. In fact, a hammer in my world would have been kinder than what I was thinking and believing. But I was a very advanced case of depression. I was just so full of negativity. It's a wonder. It took a kind of moment like that to show me a way that, and I really didn't live after that. It killed me. And what I mean by that, Kim, is who I believed myself to be died.
Yes.
And every time the mind would recreate it again, I could see, I really did have to grab those powerful thoughts and those images that I'd been suffering all those years and put them on paper because they were so powerful. I continued to believe them and have to write it down at the same time. And then eventually, it was work. It was work. And people were calling me free. I mean, my children were saying, Mom, you're so free. You're not angry anymore. But inside, I was just getting started.
Yes.
This was a self-annihilating war zone. The ego didn't go down hard. But then at some point, it all began to make sense at a whole other level. And I'm witnessing like people that come to that 9-day school for the work. We're just a month out of that school now. And we have a system where they're all working together, like the Institute for the Work. And they're just flying. They're flying. And some of them were not depressed to begin with, and they're just flying and supporting the others. And it's like watching one big mind just opening to itself. It's a beautiful thing once we know the difference between reality and imagination.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So it takes some time, it takes some energy, some effort, but the final result is well worth the effort.
Yeah, it takes some energy and effort, but not as much as suffering.
That's right.
Suffering, it costs us. That's why these beautiful young men we were speaking of that I was pointing to, like your son, they have been thinking and believing all day they don't care about me. My grades aren't good enough. I should have passed that test. I only got a B. It should have been an A. It's just, and what do they think about me? And this one's a bully, and look what I'm in. And they come home and they have got to shut this up. And some of them, it's so tough to live in that world, that it just becomes too painful to live in. Yeah. And when I hear people have committed suicide, it doesn't surprise me, because I have this reference. When I look at what I was thinking and believing, I understand why they would. If I were thinking and believing what they were thinking and believing, I would do it too. And we all would.
Yes.
The mind is so powerful, it would distort what really is going on and believe it to be something else.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so important what you said when you were talking about our thoughts, and you said a couple of times, our thoughts in this moment.
Yeah.
Because if we have listeners who are feeling like they're in that depression place, if they can just understand that thought may only be for this moment, it may not be for the next moment, and that there are ways to kind of question your own thoughts, so that you can make way for the true thoughts and the real being of how each of us is intended to be.
Yeah, for the thoughts that are truer to our hearts.
Yes.
It's like we identify and then question those thoughts that are causing the depression. It's just like some magical thing takes over. It's brilliant. And then when it's time for the next emotional hit to come, we feel it, and then it's another, in my world, another Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. And because we're either believing our thoughts or we question them. And for me, one was suffering and one was freedom. The war against reality, I lose, but only 100% of the time.
That's right. Yeah. Katie, I heard a little rumor about something exciting that's happening called the New Year's Mental Cleanse. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's kind of a reunion where people that have been to the schools for the work, or they've just read maybe Loving What Is and or one of the books, or someone's told. Anyway, we all just all kind of get together and have a free for all, and it's a place where anyone can write any kind of Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, and I work with them. And then we have facilitators in the room if people want private sessions, and everyone working with them. It's a wonderful thing. It's the work gone wild, I guess.
The next reality TV show.
Yeah. Well, it's and what I love about it also is people can just come in and spend 10 minutes, or they can come for one day or all 5 days. And it's a beautiful way to bring in the new year. It's such a beautiful symbol of let's not do another year like this for some of us that really need some kind of shift to take place.
And I can just imagine that the positive energy is palpable, and it just would be so powerful.
It's for me, it's amazing. And it's something I would show up for if no one else did, because, ultimately I'm the only one I'm working with.
That's right. So how can our listeners get in touch with you if they have questions or they want to learn more about you?
Well, they can go to thework.com and it's all there. And we're just all about how can we help. And that's a privilege, and one that we love devoting our lives to. Thank you, Katie.
And what would you like our audience to take away with them today from this time they've had with you?
That suffering is optional.
Oh,
It's
thank you
optional
so
that there is a beautiful world, and the ego would not allow us to believe that. But it's a, or mine when I first started inquiry, but it's a friendly universe, and any thought that would oppose that, I would take it to inquiry, and I do.
Well, Katie, I want to thank you so much for being with us today and taking this time out of your busy schedule to share your insights with our audience. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope that it serves, Kim, and thank you for your beautiful life and work.
Thank you.